Hi everyone, welcome back to the Flicks Files. I think I want to try and have fun with this because the movie I'm going to talk about is what I think is a really fun movie. Pirate films have always had a real rough time at the cinema. And I'm sure if you ask most people to name a pirate film, they would immediately say Pirates of the Caribbean. And for good reason, you know, they're really good films. They kind of tapered off a little bit after Dead Man's Chest, in my opinion. But, you know, there's a reason that they abide in everybody's memory. And Johnny Depp's performance certainly nailed it. You know, he completely nailed it. And he's just sent those group of films into movie history. And I always think it's rather sad that, you know, everybody thinks of Pirates of the Caribbean. But nobody ever spares a thought, at least if there are people out there that do, they're in very few numbers. Of the 1986 Roman Polanski movie, Pirates. And I really like this film. I've seen this film since, I'm going to say the very late 80s. I didn't see it when it first came out. And it was a few years before I rented it on video. And what's strange, I think, at the point that I'm recording this, and my channel's still in its infancy and I'm barely into double figures. But this is going to be the second Roman Polanski movie that I've talked about. And it's not like I've got some sort of a fascination with Roman Polanski. It's just that this film and Frantic are two films that I really like. And as with Frantic, Pirates, you know, doesn't seem to get much love and nobody's really talking about it. But this is going to be what I call a guilty pleasure video, in that, much like the one I did for Highlander 2, I know it's a movie that most people don't like. You know, critically, it was completely panned, and it was a massive flop. I think that the actual budget of the movie was $40 million. And from the little bit of reading up that I did, it only made $1 million. So a huge loss and a big disappointment for Roman Polanski. And what's interesting, this is the first film he made after a 7-year hiatus from filmmaking. Previous to this, the movie that he did was a film called Tess that he made in 1979. So he spent the intervening years doing theatre, I believe. And he always wanted to do like a swashbuckling picture. And he came out of the gate with Pirates. The centerpiece of the film, in terms of the look, has got to be the huge galleon Neptune that was built. Apparently, it took a year to manufacture this huge ship, and it cost $7 million and took over 2,000 people to work on it, to actually manufacture this ship. But, you know, the money's up there on the screen, and whenever the Neptune is like center forward in the picture, it's really good, you know, and it really adds to the look of the film. And it's a very, very good looking movie. I mean, one thing that Roman Polanski does really well, he's really good at kind of layering a texture through a movie. And Pirates has got some fantastic costume design. And, you know, the sets and the look of the film. I mean, for a pirate movie, it doesn't go down the Pirates of the Caribbean Disney route. It's a lot more earthy and gritty. I mean, the Pirates of the Caribbean movies doesn't have people slipping in diarrhea more than once or urinating into bathtubs. So, you know, he kind of made it a bit more of an earthy pirate movie. And Walter Matthau, who was 66, I believe, when he made this movie, really gives it his all as Captain Bartholomew Red. he was born in New York, but the kind of voice that he adopts for this film, it's not the "Oi, Jim lad" kind of voice. It's a bit more. Well, I'll play a clip of him speaking, and you can judge for yourself what kind of voice he's using.
Strike me blind. You've as much to say as a shoal of mackerel. Look at me. 4 years and more on a poxy desert island, yet I can still crack a smile.
So that's how he sounds in the movie. And I absolutely love his performance in this film. I think it's absolutely fantastic. And he is kind of the centerpiece of the movie. He's the driving force of the plot and what he wants to do. So let's get into it. What is this film actually about? I mean, it starts where him and one of his crewmates from his previous ship are shipwrecked, and they're floating on a raft out at sea. And they're obviously suffering effects of a lack of food, to the point that Captain Red is looking at Froggy, as he calls him, his shipmate. And he starts to imagine that he's a pig and that he's making pig sounds. He's thinking of eating him because he's so hungry. And it's right when they're at the most desperate point that they spot a ship on the horizon. And it's the aforementioned Neptune, which is this big Spanish galleon. They manage to get on board the ship. And it's there that they immediately rub the first officer the wrong way by seeing the barrel of fresh water and making a beeline for it, because they've obviously been floating at sea for a number of days. And so they kind of arrest them and throw them down into the brig. And it's there that they meet another character. And off the top of my head, I can't think of this character's name, this black actor's name, but he was the ship's cook. And for whatever reason, he's down there as well. As Captain Red speaks to the cook, he tells him that in the cargo of the Neptune, they have this treasure, which is this huge solid gold throne, which they call the throne of Kaptek Hanuak. Captain Red, being the true pirate that he is, when he gets his first glimpse of this throne, that's all he thinks about for the rest of the movie. His whole world revolves around gold. And I think there's a line in the movie where he berates his Froggy and says to him, "It's better to live without a head than to live without gold, you numbskull."
Gold will be your ruin, Captain. It will cost us our heads.
Easier to live without a head than without gold, you numbskull.
And that's his whole motivation in life. It's just the accumulation of wealth, and that's why he's a good pirate. So in order to try and get his hands on the throne, he decides to try and instigate a mutiny. And his method for doing this is he finds a rat scurrying around on the deck of the ship. And previous to this, he's already had to hack off part of his wooden leg because he gets it stuck in the planks of the raft that they're on at the beginning of the movie. So for a little while at the beginning of the movie, he's walking with a terrible limp because he's got one wooden leg that's too short. But he manages to find another sailor aboard the Neptune that's a bit of a carpenter. And he trades him a ring that he's wearing to make him a new wooden leg. So anyway, he uses the wooden leg to capture this rat. He then proceeds to drop it into the big pot of gruel that the new cook is making for the sailors. This is found by the sailors, who immediately go up in arms, and completely crazy about the sort of standards that they're living in. It's really funny, just thinking about it. And so, they start rioting. But this is quickly overturned by the officers on board the ship. They're not very successful. So basically, what the first officer does to punish Captain Red and Frog for trying to instigate this mutiny is he makes them eat the boiled rat that was in the in the broth. So they kind of cut it into two pieces, and he forces them to eat it.
Would you not prefer the head?
Nay, nay, lad. I wouldn't rob you of it.
And it sounds horrible as I'm explaining it, but when you actually watch the movie, I thought it was absolutely hilarious. So they then get thrown into the brig again with the intention that they're going to be hanged the next day. So Froggy has a hidden dagger in his sash, and they use that to loosen the bonds. And at the very last moment, just as they're about to be hanged, they break free, and an action scene takes place where they cause another mutiny, but this time they're successful, and they manage to take over the ship. So then the plot kind of moves forward, where he takes the Neptune to a pirate's cove, and there he meets up with a character called Dutch, who's played by the British actor Roy Kinnear. And Roy Kinnear is some kind of a merchant that deals in hostages and things, and he's got lots of dodgy dealings going on. And he also has some sort of a banking operation, because when Captain Red turns up, he tells him that he owes Captain Red 632 doubloons exactly. So he's having this little conversation with Dutch, and while that's happening, the first officers are in the jail in the Pirates' Cove, and they befriend one of the drunken sailors that sort of hangs around the place. And in exchange for rum, the sailor gets the first officers released, and then they take the Neptune ship back. So then Captain Red uses his 632 doubloons to buy a kind of smaller brig, which he then uses with a team of pirates that he's accumulated. And they go after the Neptune again. So what has happened in the interim is that they've managed to capture the niece of the governor of Maracaibo. So Captain Red has an idea that they'll visit the governor of Maracaibo, show him their niece, and say, if you want your niece back, we want the throne of Kaftek Hanuak. So he orders the governor to write a letter which grants them permission to take transport of the throne, and they dress in like bishop disguises to get on board the ship. And this leads to another scene that I really like, where they arrive and paddle up in this little sailboat at the side of the Neptune and hand over this letter that the governor's written. And they're in disguise, so they're not recognized. And the first officer reads this letter and thinks, oh, okay, if that's what he wants us to do, then that's what we'll do. So they lower the throne down the side into this small sailboat. And Captain Red and Frog proceed to paddle away with this big throne in the middle of this sailboat. But what they don't account for is there's a huge chain that's kind of stretches across the entrance to the bay. And they're kind of paddling backwards towards it. And obviously the throne's sticking up out of the sailboat, and it hits this chain. So they can't progress any further. And they can't lift the chain over the chair because it's just this huge, long, heavy chain. It's far too heavy. So then they think, well, we'll try and flip the throne over the chain, and then both climb over the chain to get it over the other side. But in doing so, they get the chair and themselves stuck on the chain, and the sailboat just drifts away. And it's just a really funny moment, and they're basically stuck there. There's nothing they can do. So they kind of end up being there all night, and then as the sun rises the next morning, the first officer comes to kind of arrest them again and throw them in the jail. So the plot kind of moves along fairly quickly, where they end up getting escaped from jail, and he uses the brig that he bought to attack the Neptune once more, and to kind of force the pirates to fight, just in case any of them doubt that they actually want to get involved in this attacking of this huge galleon. He turns the cannon around and fires it into the floor of his brig, and just blasts a big hole into the floor, so it begins quickly filling with water. And he does it to kind of encourage them to get off the ship. So the final kind of action sequence of the movie is where they're desperately scrabbling to get to this throne once again, and they succeed on getting it lowered down into another boat. They end up escaping with the throne. And much like Frantic, what's interesting is that Frantic had a beginning and an end that mirrored each other. At the beginning of Frantic, Harrison Ford and his wife are sat in a taxi. And at the end of the movie, they're sat in a taxi, but they're in a very different place emotionally. And with Pirates, it ends where as they were at the beginning of the movie, they're floating aimlessly at sea, only now they've got this huge throne that Walter Matthau sat on. And that's kind of where the movie ends. So it's like a nice, again, kind of a bookend to the movie. The movie started, as if they've just had an adventure that we missed out on. And it ends, so we think, so maybe they'll have another adventure, but it was never meant to be because the movie was such a huge flop. So, yeah, I've always liked this movie. And as I say, it's a really good-looking film in terms of the costume design and the set design. And it has a really good kind of texture to the movie. It has a very realistic feel to it in the way that the pirates act and, the dankness and the scumminess of it all. And, it's little details like how Captain Red spits onto a key before he puts it into a lock to use it, to like grease it up. And I like little touches like that. I think it's really, really good. So I do have it on Blu-ray, but this is another movie that's not had a release in the United Kingdom or I think America, which isn't surprising because, again, it's a movie that doesn't get much love. So they probably think, well, there's no point releasing it on Blu-ray because, no one will buy it. But I ended up finding a copy that's, I think it's Spanish, on eBay. So I do have a physical copy of it. There's absolutely no extras on it. It's just the movie. But, I just love it as a movie. So, I'm pleased to have a physical copy of it. So, yeah, so that's my very quick rundown of Pirates. And if you can see it, I think I did a search of YouTube to see if anyone else had done a movie about it. And I noticed that the actual full movie of Pirates is on YouTube in more than once. So one upload is a better quality than the other. How they've managed to do that and get over the copyright, I really don't know, but it's there. So if this video has piqued your interest and you think, well, I kind of like pirate movies and, maybe I'll give it a go, then just search for it on YouTube and you'll find it there and, you'll be able to watch the whole thing. So, yeah, I hope that that's encouraged a few of you out there to give this film a go. And I'll see you on the next video. So thanks for watching. I'll see you later. Bye.